things. We came to the number 20 of the chapter number 10. So this is very wonderful verse. There, Goswami says, Anyonyamasi sajalpa uttama shloka chetasam Kauravendra purastrenam sarvasuti manohara. So absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, we sang in the selected poetry. The ladies on the roof of all the houses of Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of Veda. So these ladies, they didn't come in front of Lord Krishna. So this really respected. So they were on the rooftop and they were discussing about Krishna. Swami is mentioning that this talk of the ladies, they are more attractive than the Vedic hymns. So this is a very, very powerful statement. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Veda. So now let's go through this purport. So Bhagavad Gita, it is said that what is the goal of Veda? So it is said in 15th chapter, verse number 15, that Vedesya Sarve Aham Vedya Vedanta Krit Vedavid Evacha. So it says that Vedesya Sarve Aham Vedya Vedanta Krit Vedanta Krit. In all the Vedas, who is to be known? Lord Krishna is to be known. That is the goal of the Veda. And even in the 15th chapter, 19th verse, it is said that if someone knows that Krishna, then he knows everything. The goal of the Veda is to know Krishna. That's why it says, actually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such a literature as the Veda, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. So, what is the purpose of all the Vedic literature? So, that is again mentioned, I think, Padma Purana or Skanda Purana, I could not remember. Smartayo Satatam Vishnu Vismartaram Jatuji Sarve Vidhi Niseda Swaya Satyayor Eva. That always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu. Okay. All the Vedic rules and regulations are meant for these two principles. Always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu. So, and the literature like Veda, Ramayana, Mahabharata, they always discuss the glories of Lord Krishna. And in Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned with respect to the Supreme Lord. So this Bhagavatam is, I think, almost out of 335 chapters, almost 150 chapters are dedicated for the Lord Krishna. That's why we understand what is the position of Lord Krishna. Therefore, while the ladies on the top of the house in the capital of the king of Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic. So, sometimes major section of the Veda talks about Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Karma Kanda activity, rituals for sense gratification, for merging in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, all those things. Major section of the Veda is like that. That's what we learned in the 4th chapter, right? So Vedas has written Veda, then he divided from one Veda into 4 Veda, thinking that, thinking the anomalies of the Kali Yuga, he was well-wisher of the living beings. As a well-wisher, he wrote that, people will perform a yajna, and by performing yajna, they will be happy. But after compiling the Veda, dividing them into 4 categories, Vyasdev himself was despondent. He himself was not happy. So many sections of the Veda he talks about. At that time, Narad Muni told him, okay, of course you have written a Veda, but they don't directly, of course they talk about Lord, but they don't directly and sufficiently glorify Lord Krishna. That's why you should write the literature which directly and sufficiently glorify Lord Krishna. That is the purpose. Then this ladies of Vrindavan, ladies of Hastinapur were already discussing Lord Krishna. That's why it is said that this talk of the ladies was more attractive than the hymn of the Veda. So it's to become a devotee of Lord Krishna, it's not required to be a great scholar. Oh, you should know Sanskrit perfectly. English perfectly. You should know how to glorify Lord Krishna. You should know the activities of Lord Krishna. That is sufficient. And that are like, and if you know these things, if you discuss about Krishna, activities of Lord Krishna, then they will become more attractive than Vedic hymns. Okay? So that is what is said. Therefore, while the ladies on the top of the house in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, the talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymn. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Das, one of the Acharya in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. Okay. But Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned Acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the song by Thakur Narottam Das to be sung to be as good as Vedic mantra. There are so many songs written by Gaudiya Vaishnava, and they give a conclusion of the Veda. So that's why they are authentic. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. Okay, whatever language you may use, that's what Srila Prabhupada said in the preface when he was going to USA. And before that, in the preface, he wrote, Tadavada Visarga Jantaga Viplava. Yasmin Pratishlokam Abadha Vatati Api. Namani Anantasi Yaso Aniketam H. Sunwanti Gayanti Gunanti Sadava. Okay, so Prabhupada says, I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, but still I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of the society on the strength of the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam. On the other hand, that literature which is full of description of the transcendental glories of the Lord, of the name, fame, form, and pastime of the unlimited Supreme Lord is transcendental creation meant for bringing about the revolution in the impious life of the misdirect civilization. So, if the literature is imperfectly composed, but if describing the transcendental glories of the Lord, then they are sufficient to bring the revolution within the heart of misdirected civilization. That is what language is immaterial, but subject matter is important. That's why the ladies who were absorbed in the action of the Lord, in the thought and action of the Lord, developed the consciousness of the Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. So the talk was as good as the Vedic wisdom. And therefore, although such a ladies might not have been very learned scholar in the Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. Vedic hymns in the Upanishad are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord. But the talk of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord. And thus they were more pleasing to heart. So as we discussed, Vedas glorify Lord Krishna most indirectly. And majorly they talks about Dharma Kanda. But this talk of the ladies was directly about Lord Krishna. Yeah. So that's why they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appear to be more valuable than learned Brahmana's benediction. So that's why you might have heard the one story in the Krishna book that once upon a time Lord Krishna and Balram were hungry. So at that time Krishna requested his friends to go and beg from the Brahmanas who were performing yajna. So when they went there, they didn't give anything for Lord Krishna and Balram to eat. When they came back to Krishna and Balram, Lord Krishna and Balram sent them to go to the wives of those Brahmana. So when those cowherd boy went to the wives of Brahmana, they said, Krishna and Balram are hungry, they want food from you. They immediately gave. So these wives are not so much learned, but they have devotion. That's why, if you remember, the verse number 1 to 7, we have discussed one thing, that Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayajita Janityasu Vedagya Jnanam Chayadetikam. That by rendering devotional service unto personality of God as Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires costless knowledge and detachment from the world. So knowledge and everything will come Okay. But if you don't have a knowledge about Veda, it doesn't mean that you don't have devotional service. So that's why it is very, very important that ladies' talk appear to be more valuable than learned Brahmana's benediction. So this is the conclusion. Absorbed in the thought of transcendental qualities of the Lord, which sung in selected poetry, the ladies on the roof of all the houses of Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymn of the Veda. So this is very, very important verse for everyone. It doesn't mean that we don't have to study Shastra. We have to study. But that the purpose of studying Shastra is that we get the devotion at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Here he says, Save kilayam purusa puratano te eka asida vises atmani agre gunepyo jagat atmanisvare nimilitatma nisi supta saktisu. So what they were talking, these ladies were talking that they said here, he's the original. So what was their conversation? So that conversation is mentioned here. That they said here he is the original personality of Godhead, as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge, as if sleeping at the night, their energy suspended. So this comes in the 8th chapter also, 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that how the creation and sustenance happen. So I'm not going to discuss again here. Here they are talking about the creation. In the next verse, they says, so basically, what Sukha Goswami narrated in the beginning, how Krishna is a creator. So regarding this thing, is mentioned. Krishna existed before. He says, Sa eva bhuyo nija virya choditah swajiva maya prakrutim sitsu shatim nama rupatmani rupanamni vidita saman sara sastrakrit. The personality of Godhead again desiring to give the names and form to his part and parcel, the living entities place them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. So earlier that was a primary creation, this is secondary creation. Personality of Godhead again desiring to give names and forms to his part and parcel, means who are part and parcel, Jivatma. The living entities, place them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. So there are two kinds of Jivatma, Muktatma and Nitya Mukta, Nitya Baddha. Nitya Muktas are eternally liberated. They are eternally engaged in the reciprocation of transcendental loving service with both the Lord. So, but those who are wanted to separately enjoy from Lord Krishna, they are put in this material world. So they continue. Sava ayam yat padma atra surayo jitendriya nirjita matarisvana pasyanti bhakti utakali tamalatmana nanvesa satvam pari maharti. Here is the same personality of Godhead whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by the dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and senses. That is the only way to purify the existence. Who can see the Supreme Lord? They says that they can experience the form of the Lord Krishna is experienced by those who are completely cleansed from the material consciousness. But same thing is said in the Bhagavad Gita that Esam antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam idandvamho nirmukta bhajante mam dradavita. It says in the 7th chapter, verse number 28. He says that person who have acted piously in the previous life and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are free from the dualities of illusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So only those who are free from the material consciousness by the dint of devotional service and full control of life and senses. That is the only way to purify the existence. Yes. So सवा अयम सख्य अनुगीत सक्तो वेदेषु गुहेषु च गृहवादिभिः एक ईशो जगत आत्मलीलया सृजति अवयति न तत्र सज्जते. Oh dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastime are described in the confidential part of Vedic literature by his great devotee. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world and yet remain unaffected. If you read the chapter number 9 of Bhagavad Gita, there Krishna says in the few verses that here, okay, these few verses, like how he creates but still is unaffected and all. So then, so all Vedic literatures glorify the Lord Krishna. यदा हि धर्मेण तमोधीयन् रूपा जीवन्ति तत्रे सहि सतत्व पीला धत्ते भगं सत्यमृतं दया यशो भवाय रूपाणि दग्ध युगे युगे. It says, whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest mode of existence, Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to faithful, perform wonderful activities, and manifest various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods in each. So this is here they are mentioning that why Lord Krishna appeared. Basically, it is mentioned that whenever there is administrator like animals, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam sujami. So if religion is arising, raising, it's arise, and religion is diminishing, and to re-establish the religion and to protect his devotee, Lord Krishna appeared. Okay. So that is what is same thing was mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and again he has spoken here. He says, Aho alam shlatyatama yado kula aho alam punyatama madurvanam desa pumsa rusabhasriya pati swachanmana chanda kramanena cha janjati. Oh, how supremely glorified! Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of the King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of goddess Virtue, has taken his birth and wander in his childhood. So of course, these are things are spoken by different ladies. So, this is Ahobat Swar Yasasa Tirakshari Usastali Punya Yasari Puha Pasyanti Nityam Yad Anugrahe Sitam Smitavaloka Swapatim Swayat Prajaha. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of heavenly planet and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. Inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings in his loving feature. So they were always seeing Lord Krishna. He glanced at them and favored them with the sweet smiles. Nunam Vrata Snana Huta Dineswara Samarshito hi Asya Gruhito Panidihi Vibantiyaha Sakhi Adaramruta Muhur Vrajasriya Sumuhur Yada Asaya. Oh friend, just think of his wives whose hands he accepted, how they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifice, perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly release now the nectar from his lips. The damsel of Rajbhumi would often faint just by expecting such a favors. So this is a they are mentioning the fortune of the wives of Lord Krishna. या वीर्यशुल्केन हुता स्वयं वरे प्रमथ्य चेद प्रमुखान् हि सुष्मिना प्रद्युम्न सांबा अम्बसुता दयो परा याशाहृता भौम वदे सहस्रश. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmani, Satyabhama, Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from the Swayamvar ceremony after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Sisupal. Other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasur and thousands of his assistants. All these ladies are glorious. इतापरं स्त्रीत्वम् अपासत् पेशलं निरस्तशोचं बत साधु कुर्वते यासां गृहात् पुष्करलोचना पतिर्जात्वापेत्यारुतिस्पुरुषन्. All these women auspiciously glorify their lives despite their being without individuality, without purity. Their husband, lotus-eyed person God, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their heart by making valuable presentation. Okay, so devotees of the Lord are purified soul. Okay, so all these women auspiciously glorify their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. So, so basically here they are talking about the 16,100 queens. They were kidnapped by Narkasur. And because of that they become impure, but still Lord Krishna accepted them. Being accepted by him, since they surrendered to Lord Krishna, this impurity was vanquished. That is what he said. The devotee of the Lord are purified soul. As soon as the devotee surrender into the lotus feet of the Lord sincerely, the Lord accept them, and thus devotee at once become free from all material contamination. Such devotees are above the three modes of material nature, and there is no bodily disqualification of the devotee. Just as there is no qualitative difference between Ganges water and filthy drain water when they are amalgamated. The fallen girls under the clutches of Bhaumasur sincerely prayed to Lord Krishna for their deliverance, and then sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. Because they surrendered and they prayed to Lord Krishna, they became pure. The Lord therefore accepted them as his wives, thus their lives become glorified. Such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as the most devoted husband. Although these wives had become impure, these ladies were impure because of being kidnapped by Narkasur, but when they surrender to Krishna, they become supremely pure. He says, Ivavitam gadantinam sagira puruyositam drikshanena abhinandana sasmitena yayoharihe. While the ladies of the capital were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings, causing the grace and casting the grace of his glance over them. He departed from the city. So this way, Lord Krishna departed from the city by accepting these prayers. This means, he smiled. So they were glorifying, and Krishna smiled. So if someone is saying something, Krishna didn't say, "Oh, you are right, you are so nicely glorifying me," but he just smiled. They accepted their prayers, considering they are very highly elevated. Okay. And after accepting these prayers, casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed. Okay, so then he says, Ajata Satru Putrana Gopithayam Tudrushi Prebhya Sakti Snehat Prayutta Chatur Ranginam. Maharaj Yudhishthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense, horse, elephant, chariot, and army to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the Asura. Maharaj did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. So Yudhishthir Maharaj sent the army with him. He says, Atha duragatan sauri gauravan virahaturan sanni vartradam smidda prayatsva nagarim priye. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him considerable distance to see him off. So, when guests come to our house and they are very, very dear to us, and they are leaving from our house, what do? We accompany them certain distance, right? So, same way, the Pandava, out of affection, they accompany Lord Krishna for certain distance. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, pursued them to return home. He proceeded toward Dwarka with his dear companion. Yes. Guru Jangalha Panchalan Surasena Sayamunan Brahmavartam Kurukshetram Matsya Sarasvatam Atha Marudhanva Atikramya Savira Pira Yoparan Anartan Bhargava Gaj Shranta Vadho Managa Vibhu. O Shanak, Sonak, Goswami is continuing. O Sonak, the Lord then proceeded towards Kurujangala, Panchala, Surasena, the land of the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Saraswata, the province of the desert, and the land of scanty water. After crossing this province, he gradually reached the Sauvira and Abira province. Then west of this reached the Dwarka at last. Tatra tatra hi tatra tatri hari pratyugatarna sayam vejati sam manchat vishwagam gatastada. On his journey through this province, he was welcomed, worshipped, given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. So this ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, 10th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. So that way we end chapter number 3. Sorry, 10. So thank you very much.